All right, and welcome back to Don't Limit God. I am your host, Joseph, and my guest today is Bonita Owens. She's a leadership coach, she's a speaker, she's the owner of AWN Leadership Consulting. Consulting?
Yep.
Yes,
right.
consulting. I got it right. How are you? How's your day going?
Wonderful. I am grateful. Thank you.
Okay, so, listen. We start every episode off with this saying, God, love, and truth are universal, but the specifics of God, love, and truth are not. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's very interesting thought because what comes up for me in that is we all have a different experience of who God is, what love is, what truth is, and how God shows up in our lives and how we view God is very personal to each and every one of us. And so, but truth, God, I love that. I believe that humankind, human nature is looking right for that, either looking or wanting to experience or realizing that they need that higher being and higher power, and trying to interpret that and explain that in their own way.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so this series is the greatest story never told is the War of Self.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's named that is because we all have our stories, right? And the moments that make us into the people that we are today aren't really told. And the battles aren't really seen because it's mostly an inner battle of past and present, of wants and needs. And so today, what is your story that you would like to tell?
This is so interesting. As I told you, I responded very, what else the word I want to use? Immediately to the call to talk about this, because I think I agree with you. There are so many things left unsaid and untold when we're looking at someone's outside, when we're looking at their success and what they've accomplished. And there's so many things that are left untold. And I don't think we do it necessarily on purpose. I think there are certain experiences that we just take and move on with. And we don't necessarily think that it could be very important or helpful or life-changing to someone else. And so I'm so glad that you're giving space for this conversation, really. And because I knew exactly what it is that I wanted to talk about. And it's something I really haven't talked about in a public forum. So you're getting this first.
Hey, yes, good.
But what immediately came up for me is when I was thinking about this is my turning point in deciding not to shrink in the presence of greatness. So I grew up in the church. I grew up as a young woman that was always taught to, respect your elders and listen to adults, right? And adults know best, and to look up to people who were making a difference or who were smart or who was successful, who had a title, and especially when you're looking at, pastors in the church or mothers in the church, all of those things, right? People who are leaders in my life. And because growing up that way, and I'm not saying that's a negative thing, but there's usually a dark side to every strength out of alignment is what I teach my clients, right? Every strength, everything that we have good out of alignment, it can work against us. And I think in my experience, those things worked against me as well as for me. Reason being is because being taught that you listen to everything and whatever an adult says is truth and they know more than you. How I interpreted that even into adulthood, right, is that if you had a title or you have a level of success, then you had something I didn't. You knew more than me. And there's a lot of times where I even assumed other people knew more than me about what was best for me, because that's the way I was brought up. Like, you listen to your mother knows best. And so when I got on my journey, started my journey of tapping into my own greatness, my own gifts, my own talents, who I am purposed to be and who I'm becoming, what I started to be aware of as I began to grow and be more aware of who I am, that when I was in the presence of people that I admired, I was in the presence of people who had accomplished things that I desired to accomplish. When I was in the presence of people who other people, was recognized or looked up to, whatever the case may be, when I was in their presence, I shrank. I felt like I needed to be small because I felt like they had something I didn't have. And so when I got really like that clarity and awareness, like, whoa, I'm shrinking. And I mean, so your listeners will understand what that looks like. They couldn't see that necessarily, but just in the way that I may talk to them, right? In the way, like, I wouldn't talk to them the way I'm talking to you right now. Like right now, I know exactly who I am. I'm talking with authority because I know what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about myself, right? But when when I were in their presence, it was different. It was almost like I was approaching them, like this, little girl who was wide-eyed, or what do you call it when you are just kind of naive or looking up to someone, as if they hung the moon and you didn't, right? And so I realized that compromised my sense of self and the power and authority that was inside of me. And so one time what I did when I became aware of this, it was a woman that I greatly admire, a mentor. I consider her a mentor. And I was talking to her, and I had become aware of it already. And when I was talking to her, that shrinking energy was apparent to me. And I went away from her after we finished talking. And I'm like, oh, I did it again. And I went back to her and I told her what happened. Now she looked at me like, okay, like I didn't notice, right? But that didn't matter because I didn't do it for her. I did it for me. I did it to call out that thing that I was dealing with and that I was determined to overcome. And what I realized, that really helped to empower me. It's like, ooh, I called it out, because one of the things and this is why it's so powerful, I think you're having this space for these conversations, because when we call things out that is lurking on the inside, that in and of itself gives us the release and the power and the ability, I truly believe, to overcome that. And so once I told her this, I was like, I just need to let you know, when I came to you earlier, I shrank when I was talking to you. And this is something that I am working on. And when I was talking to her the second time, I had more power and authority in my being. And since then, just being aware and being intentional. And the understanding, this is how I overcame it, is to understand that the power and the authority and the greatness I see in those people is only a reflection of that which is inside of me. And so my greatness and their greatness can happen and exist simultaneously, and that I don't have to shrink, right, in order to acknowledge someone else's greatness any more than they don't have to shrink to acknowledge mine. And so since then, I can really approach anybody. I don't care who it is. Of course, I ain't been in front of the president yet. However, but people that I admire and who are, seen as being great and powerful and all of those things, I can really approach them fully in being into the being of who I am in my power and greatness, and recognize the greatness in them as well.
So, question, in the previous moments, right, when you felt that you would shrink, was that solely based off how you saw others, or also a reflection of how you saw yourself?
Yes, it was both. It was both. It was me not understanding that because I saw myself as not yet where they are. Right. So it was almost like they were the lion and I was the lamb. Right. It was like, and so I did not see because the outside did not reflect, my outside did not reflect what their outside reflected. And me not understanding that, it was how I saw myself. I didn't see fully, the greatness in me, and who I already am. And I love how, Lisa Nichols is one of the people that I follow. And she says, don't compare your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 22. And so a lot of times we see certain people and we don't see their full journey. We don't see where they started off, right? And if I'm at my chapter 2, then I'm exactly where I need to be. And I didn't see necessarily their journey to get to their chapter 22, but where they are now is not the way they started. And so I had to really just realize that, it's all about how I see myself now. And just because the outer results aren't necessarily where I think they should be or whether I want them to be, the full vision hasn't realized itself yet. That doesn't mean that I'm not already there. I'm not that person. I'm becoming that person. And so, it really was a turning point in how I viewed me.
So you talked about the conversation that you had with the lady, and the first time you spoke and you left, it was a fire in you, I guess, that was maybe lit, where you're like, no, like this is the moment where I change, right? Where I acknowledge what is and I do something about it.
Yep.
How did you get to that point? Was there a conversation with someone else? Was it just all inner? At what moment did you say, I have to address this, or I'm ready to address it?
So I had become aware of it before. Like, I don't know. I don't even remember what caused me to become aware of it. It was kind of like a thing that was there. And I wasn't at the point in my journey to really be able to label it yet. And so as I became more self-aware and really, just my own personal development journey, it's just that's why it's so important to always be growing, right? It's for us to never think that we are done with our journey of growth. And that's why I'm dedicated to it, because at every level or stage more is revealed to us about ourselves, right? Things
Yeah.
that we just been doing, we didn't know we were doing it because it was just who we were at the time, right? And so as we grow, things become illuminated. It's like, ooh, no, that's no longer who I am and who I want to be. So it was just a revelation. I don't remember exactly the moment. I'm like, ooh, I'm shrinking when I come in front. And I've been doing it all my life, but it was a thing where I realized that this is not who I am anymore. And so once I became aware of it, then I had an opportunity. This is what happens when we become aware of something that it's time for us to shift and change. Then we always are presented with opportunities, right, to exercise that new level of being of self. So that was my opportunity to not shrink. And I did, right? And so what I normally do is I tell my clients is you can do a redo. Like sometimes a redo is what you need to do. Instead of saying, oh, I did it again. Okay, next time I'm going to do it differently. That's okay to do. But sometimes doing a redo and just like confronting it right then and there can be the most powerful thing to do that shift. Because who wants to come up to somebody and say that over and over again? I don't. So that's one of the things that kind of jars your brain and your spirit to be like, oh, okay. So it was just a thing. I decided like, oh, I need to do a redo. I need to speak this out. I need to make a correction. And this is my opportunity to make that correction. And I could have made the correction in myself, but it would not have been as transformative and as powerful than it was for me to just call it out and tell the person who I looked up to so that I can make that shift.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So for the person that it happened to, I think that's amazing. Going back to what you said as a child, it was the people that had titles that essentially were put on pedestals, right?
Yep.
And it was, so now, you're growing, you're an adult, and that same thing that you learned as a child, you had to do to someone that you admired, almost essentially who was on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was trained, and not intentionally, but in I would say this, I interpreted that when people are of a certain stature or whatever, you put them on a pedestal, right? Because obviously they have something you don't, in my mind. And so therefore, like at that point it was like, oh, I can admire you, or I can appreciate who you are without taking away from who I am.
Right.
Right. And so there's no need for pedestals, because I believe that we are a reflection of one another. Right. And so when I see the greatness in other people, it's a reflection of that which is in myself. And so there's no need for pedestals. We all have light. We all have purpose. We all have greatness. It's just we are at different levels and different stages in our life, and how much we're allowing that light and greatness to show.
The specifics are not the same.
Right.
The
specifics are not the same. And it's all okay. It doesn't make one person less than somebody else. And that's not our culture. Our culture doesn't teach that, but it's up to us, right, to grasp that idea and to not allow someone else, because people see them a certain way or put them on a pedestal. And as you know, in our culture, especially now with everybody has to sell a video and social media, right? It's a fast way up and a fast way down, as well. So, at the end of the day, we're all just people. It doesn't matter what our titles are or how much money we make. We are just, at the bare bones, we're all people. And so, you know, it's important for us to remind ourselves of that. We're just all people.
So now, as a leadership coach, how has your growth and your confidence in self, how has that helped you, or did that lead to you starting your leadership consulting firm?
Yes. And actually, I started off doing, and I still do, women's empowerment. So I started off speaking and coaching. My journey was to help women like me and help. I went through what I call now a mom life crisis, and realizing that I had given all my energy and time to everyone else and really have forgotten about me. I've forgotten about my own, talents and what passions and what made me happy and excited every day. And that was okay. I mean, I made a choice. I got married, I had children and all of that. And I lost and left a part of me. And I realized a lot of women are the same. So that's my journey. And I started off doing that. And then I went into leadership, coaching and consulting because I think that leadership is so misunderstood and yet so important because a leader can make or break, a company, and companies are made up of people. And so my thought is, what if we can make the workplace a better place and better environment by developing leaders and people in the workplace. And so that was just a way for me to have a greater influence and greater impact, and realizing that people spend at least 40 hours a week at work. And so you either take what's work home or you bring what's home to work. And so people are influenced or impacted either way it goes. So, but to say that, yeah, I mean, doing this work, I've definitely had to work on my confidence and my being able to trust in my God-given talents and abilities. Certain things, you get a vision and you really don't know how to make it happen. And some things just don't make sense, they just don't make sense. And so there's some things that I've been called to. It's like, am I really qualified for this? Like, I don't have all the certifications and the paperwork to say I can do this. Right. So I've had to really work through that because I have a healthcare background, and healthcare is all about your certifications and your, licensure and all of that. So I was groomed and, trained, like, to do this, you got to be licensed, right? So I've had to definitely work through that mindset. Like, no, I believe that if you have a desire and a vision to do something, that's because it's meant for you to do. And there's one of the ladies that I follow, another kind of a mentor, not really a mentor, but somebody I follow, influencer. And she says that God does not tease me. And I love that affirmation.
Yeah.
And it's like, if God gives you something, it's not just to say, I'm showing you this, but you can't have it. No, it's because you are meant for it. You are aligned to it and you're purpose for it. It's just, we got to catch up to the idea.
Yeah. God told me a couple of days ago, God said, if you do it, I'll supply it.
Yes.
It's like, okay, but I need the supplies before I do it.
Yeah, that's what we want. No. Exactly. That's what we want as humans. I'll supply it first, then I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have got to be willing to take the steps and knowing, it's going to be there when we need it, right? And it's the action and the motion that brings all the things we want. And it's not the stand still and praying for it to come to us, right? Pray and move. So, yeah.
Okay, so $1 million question, right? I have my own thoughts, Is a leader appointed or born? It can be both, obviously.
Um, I'm gonna say neither.
Okay, go on.
And the reason being is that I feel that, yes, there are some people who are innate. They have innate characteristics and qualities that makes them prime for leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that some people are appointed as leaders. But at the end of the day, I think leaders are ones who raise their hand and decide. Because if I waited to be appointed, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. Nobody's going to appoint me to do nothing. And if they did, I may not have been ready at the time. So, and to say leaders are born is to say that you can't ever develop the characteristics and the skills to be a leader, which I don't think is true. So I think leaders are the ones who decide to be leaders.
Ooh, I like that. I was going to say, so for me, it's along those lines. I think that we all are, simply because of influence, right? We don't know how many people we actually influence.
Yes.
We only know our intentions.
Yes.
But a lot of times our intentions don't yield the best results.
Right.
It's the things that we aren't intentionally trying to do. It's the consistency.
Yes.
That influence people and not really our agenda.
Yes. So true.
So yes, listen, along the same lines. I like it.
For sure. For sure. You know, it's so interesting when you say that because I just started trying to be more intentional about doing videos on LinkedIn. And I did this video that was supposed to be, it was a motivational video. And a lady came to me just last week with tears in her eyes. And to me, the video didn't warrant tears. I'm just going to be honest with you. To me.
Right.
And she came, she's like, I just want to let you know, oh my gosh, that video that you did, it really touched me. And the way it touched her was not even the intention of the video, of the content, which was the other thing. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, to your point, you never even know. And you might have one intention and it can just really touch someone in a total different way that you never really intended, but how they interpreted what you put out there. And it doesn't even matter. The results are the same, that she got something that she felt she needed that really touched her. And so that really encouraged me to be like, you don't know what you're going to say that's going to touch somebody. You just need to show up and not, just show up and give out of who you are, and the rest will take care of itself. So it was just like a blow my mind experience for that to happen. And I've heard other people, and that wasn't the first time someone said, oh, I watch your videos. It wasn't about that. It was just this thing that I thought was kind of small was so big to her. That's what got me.
Yeah. That's good.
You never know. Show up. And it just encourages me to show up. Like, just show up. Don't worry about it. Just show up.
And so, as a leadership coach, you can be found online.
I can.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Just started TikTok. Also on TikTok. And my website is awnleadershipconsulting.com, where you can find me.
And that will be
Bonita Owens.
Yes. So I will have all links in the description.
Awesome.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I just want to
It's so
acknowledge you
good.
for just, again, giving a space for deep conversations and rich conversations. This has been good. You've really evoked something new in me to be able to share with other people. So keep doing what you're doing. Love it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.